What's up, chat? Happy Mushoku Mondays, and welcome back to yet another trek from the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Old Dragon Tale Part 5 of, at this point, probably 10. I don't know. We just got done with Part 1. It took 4 parts for that. I don't know, maybe another 4 parts. Maybe we'll go to 8. Again, as usual, we'll go as we go. We'll take it the pace that we take it. If it takes forever, it'll take forever. Either way, I'm eating this up. Last Mushoku Monday was pretty damn crazy. I'm excited to see sort of what we get into next, but we'll see. I don't think I really have anything to really kind of cover from last week that I sort of missed. I think the only thing that really kind of popped my mind as I was doing, I think as we were doing Mushoku Monday, was that little statement that was made by Laplace, and the idea that even if they bared their fangs to the human god at that time, he would have slipped away effortlessly. Which implies to me that the human god at this point, I mean, that was the assumption, again, because it seems like the dragon god anyway is really powerful. It seems like all these gods are powerful much more than their actual, individual counterparts. I would assume that the human god is powerful. It's just kind of the question mark there is like, what happened? Like, back here, Laplace is saying, even if I went after him, he would have gotten away really easily. Like, he's much more powerful than I am. I would never been able to catch him back then. This is an admittance of him at the current time, which is very opposite to sort of what we present the man god as, and the idea that they are this weak individual that is up in this barren lands, and that really the effort to take him down in the end is going to be just getting to him. It's just the act of getting to him. It doesn't seem like the man god in general is a powerful being, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here, but yeah, that was a kind of an interesting thing of him noting that like, hey, even if I did go after him at that point, he would have gotten away. I would never been able to take him out then. Even though he wished he can go back and change something back there, he failed. He failed to do that, but that's about the only thing that kind of popped in my mind. But other than that, chat, I'm sorry. Hey, chat. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to Premiere. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week after Mushoku Monday. Your guys' support and joining me on this journey through Mushoku Tensei has been absolutely fantastic. I could not ask for more. And yes, as per usual, I greatly appreciate the sports channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. For you guys to part with your hard-earned money in order to support this, it means a great deal to me. Last week we had Spun Monkey with 18 months at this point. Godsmack Diesel with 8 months. Thank you guys so much for your long-time support. Nicholas, just coming out of nowhere and dropping 70 total memberships. Oh my gosh. Sprinkling emotes everywhere. I was actually a little bit late to get to the premiere, so I almost missed the first batch, but it's like, okay, Nicholas coming out of nowhere, getting crazy again. Thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate that. Rose Points with 28 months at this point. Thank you so much. And a super thank you. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But that said, let's just dive right into it. Tales from the Six-Faced World, Old Dragon's Tale, second part, chapter 12, The Dragon and the Lady. Are we finally going to get into the Dragon God and how they met Lady Lunaria? Many centuries had passed. Life on Dragon War Mountain remained as peaceful as ever. For humans, many centuries are an unimaginably long time, but for Rosalina, who is an elf, it wasn't much at all. But even so, it was still enough time for a little girl to grow into a fine lady. Rosalina had grown from a delicate young girl into a beautiful woman. However, inside, she hadn't changed much. She was still the same innocent girl as before. That was only natural, considering she'd lived her life with no one but Laplace and Salyak for company. Yeah, a little bit sheltered there. Yet her heart was far from at peace. Her once ever-present smile had faded, replaced by a heavy gloom that weighed on her. And it was no wonder. Ever since she heard that story, the one about Laplace becoming one of the 5 dragon generals, he had started wearing a dark, grim expression more and more often. Okay, even after like a century of time, he's still wearing the same expression. That's a long period of regret. I mean, again, that is the regret that he's holding, but it's so interesting that him bringing it back up has triggered it to come back, and it's weighed on him for this long. On the surface, he seemed the same as always, but Rosalina could tell. It wasn't anger or irritation, nothing so direct, but there was no doubt that negative emotions were building up inside of him. Lately, Laplace had been away from home more often too. He had always gone out from time to time, but now he only returned once a month. She knew the reason. He was investigating the rumors of the resurrection of the great empress of the demon world, Kishirishu. I was about to say, is he like on a trail of some sort of technique that he really badly needs or something like that? Or potentially has some sense about like maybe the dragon god or something like that? Nope. Great empress. Speaking of the great empress of the demon world, she was such a famous figure that even Rosalina knew about her. A legendary figure, known far and wide. Thousands of years ago, she led the demons in the war against humanity. That war happened centuries before Rosalina was even born, but she knew it was an enormous conflict, one that engulfed the entire world. The war had only ended when the Empress of the Demon World was defeated. So yeah, this would be the first Great Human-Demon War. But if she were to return, that war would start over again. What would Laplace do? I'm surprised that Laplace is concerned about that. That would be something that he would be, like, focused on. Because I think at this point, they were implying that he was amongst the demon folks. That he was amongst them, not necessarily the humans. Would he side with the humans or the demons? Or would he remain a mere spectator? Watch from the sidelines? Whatever the case, it was clear that he was too busy preparing for what was to come. For now, though, he didn't seem to be thinking that far ahead. He was simply trying to confirm whether the rumors were true or not. Rosalina let out a deep sigh as she gathered the laundry. She understood that Laplace was busy. He had always been a man driven by a strong sense of duty. If something big was happening in the world, it was only natural that he wouldn't have time to pay attention to her. Poor girl. She gonna pack up her stuff and leave. She would talk about that last time. I'm gonna pack up her stuff and leave. If he doesn't appreciate me, I'm gonna pack up my stuff and leave. But still, there was a lingering doubt in her heart. Maybe he was avoiding her. Maybe that conversation had left him in a bad mood. Laplace had told her from the start, the story ends in tragedy. No matter how good things seemed to be along the way, the ending was destined to be sad. But from what she had heard so far, it didn't seem like a tragic story at all. Yeah, the problem is that you stopped before it and he still went right into it. His mindset went right into it. A lonely half-dragonfolk, half-demon child was taken in, educated, and earned a place in the world. It was a success story. If the tale ended there, it wouldn't have been a bad ending. It would be a happy one. But the story wasn't over. If it were, Laplace would be living in such a remote place, flying around the world alone, and writing book after book. Something must have happened. Something that made Laplace call it a tragic ending. Maybe he didn't want to talk about it. Maybe he avoided coming home because he didn't want to be pressed to continue the story. If that was the case, Rosalina wanted to tell him loud and clear, then just forget about it. I don't think that's the case. I think if he didn't want to, he'd probably just not tell her, or say, I'm not going to talk about it. Sure, but still, Rosalina wanted to know. She wanted to understand the reason behind those sorrowful, pained expressions he sometimes wore. I don't want to push him, but I want to see. Is she going to translate it? She's going to probably translate the books. She wanted to know so she could help him. She wanted to be his support. But yeah, you got to be ready for them to tell it. You can't push it. But if talking about it only made things harder for him, she didn't need to know. Even without knowing, she could support him. Yeah. She could do the laundry. She could clean the house. Over the past 100 years, her cooking has improved a lot. Laplace always said that her food was delicious, so she wasn't sure if it really improved. But at least Salyak always ate with enthusiasm and praised her cooking. Well, she couldn't understand Salyak's words. So those praises always came through Laplace as a translator. It's like, God, this crap is horrible. Tell her to put some pepper in or something. He likes it. But still, there were many other ways that she could help. She even refrained from learning the ancient dragon god language, thinking it would be rude to pry into Laplace's secrets, or things he didn't want to talk about. Okay, yeah, I can see that. I mean, I can see that train of thought. It didn't seem like he minded before. And again, that technically is a way to help, that you could translate the stuff for him, for somebody else to be able to read. It's two birds, one stone situation. But if she worked hard, she could learn it, read it, and then she'd be able to organize the bookshelves. So, at the very least, when he did come home, she wanted him to pay attention to her. Lately, even when he did come back, he would shut himself in his study, writing endlessly all day. He always lamented that there wasn't enough time to finish writing everything since he was away for such long periods of time. I kind of wonder how much he wrote so far. Is this a massive library for like a century of this stuff? In the past, she only exchanged a few brief words with him. She wanted more, and she was willing to work for it. She wasn't a child anymore. Ah, master, please come home soon. She had finished the laundry, cleaned the house. After lunch, she even tidied up Salyak's sleeping area. She made sure to scatter his scales and droppings around the house, marking the territory so other dragons wouldn't intrude. Not that they would, anyway. Yeah, this is the king. This is the king. Dinner time was approaching, but Rosalina had no appetite. Just then, her ears twitched as they caught a sound. The beating of enormous wings, stronger, more familiar than those of the red dragons that lived nearby. It was Salyak. Laplace had come home. Master! Unable to contain herself, Rosalina rushed outside, and sure enough, there he was, Laplace, riding on Salyak's back. As soon as he saw her, he raised a hand, greeting her. Salyak flapped its wings and descended, landing in an open space in front of the home. It was an unexpected, graceful landing for a red dragon. As soon as it touched the ground, Laplace leapt off Salyak. Salyak yawned, as if exhausted, and sluggishly made his way to the back of the house. It had likely grown quite tired after flying around continuously. I'm home, Rosalina. What's the matter? It's rare for you to come out and greet me outside. It's not rare. Lately, I've been greeting you all the time. Have you? I see. My apologies. No, it's fine. Lord Laplace, would you like something to eat? Rosalina asked hesitantly. More often than not, when she asked Laplace if he wanted to eat, he would refuse. After all, Laplace rarely ate. Ah, yes. I've been flying around without eating or drinking, and now I'm starving. So yes, please. Yes. But the day seemed to be different. Rosalina responded cheerfully and rushed into the kitchen. The stove's fire had not been put out. She poured water from the jug into a pot, set it to boil, and immediately began preparations. Rosalina. Yes, what is it, master? Hearing his voice from behind, Rosalina spun around, about to run over to him. Ah, no, it's fine. Just listen while you keep cooking. God, this girl's like desperate for attention. This girl's been sitting around for a century just begging for him to give her attention. It's kind of sad that she's all cooped up here. I mean, it's her choice to do this, but it feels like kind of bad. Laplace's voice stopped her in her tracks. Pouting slightly, Rosalina resumed cooking. Today, I confirmed it. The great demon world empress, Kishirika Kishidishu, has indeed been resurrected. No, calling it a resurrection might not be quite right. She probably revived over 500 years ago. She was in her complete form, and just like during the war in the past, she has become a puppet master, a belligerent demon kings. War is coming. Rosalina's hands paused for a moment, but they quickly resumed moving. Even if someone told her that war was coming, she didn't really understand what that meant. She had never experienced war. The Great War, known as the Human-Demon War, had reportedly claimed an extraordinary number of lives, but for Rosalina, who lived a secluded life on the Dragon Roar Mountain, its relevance was little. No matter how large a war was, she couldn't imagine it reaching this far. Yeah, kind of in a safe zone. You're kind of in a safe zone and a dangerous zone. And apparently, that war is being orchestrated from the shadows by him. Him? The one I have been pursuing. The one I must defeat. My enemy. Okay, I don't remember if they actually implied that before. Because what we got a perspective of is that he suddenly shows up at Kishirika, and that happens. So this implies that, yes, he acknowledges that she's a threat. She's puppeteering all these kings. She's causing problems. But additionally, the man god's involved. He knows right here the man god's involved with the situation, and that's what leads him to go to Kishirika directly. It's kind of twofold in the end, so it's still the end result there. But it does sort of answer my kind of confusion that I had with that whole scenario, was like, it sort of implied the idea that Bodigadi was delusional at the time, and so it did kind of make me wonder if Laplace was even doing anything bad. And yes, it technically did cut into later on the idea of, from a different perspective, that, yeah, he technically did go after Kishirika. Like, he was taking out Kishirika. But still, Rosalina's hands stop. I don't know what his goal is, but I have a duty to uncover it and put an end to it. He always lays groundwork ahead of time. If I don't remove the pieces and traps he has set, then I will inevitably be cornered. That's why I will take part in this war. I don't know which side I'll end up on, though. Before Rosalina's eyes, the water in the pot began to boil vigorously, but she couldn't help turning around. Laplace was strong, but he was alone. The other dragon generals were gone, and his enemy was likely the one who killed them. He might die. Laplace might lose. Yeah, it's a legitimate fear there. Master. With an uneasy feeling, Rosalina peeked into the dining room. Laplace sat in his chair as usual, looking composed. But there was something like a shadow clinging to his face. Maybe they wouldn't meet again. She had a terrible premonition. Damn, we're like right at that point, I'm guessing. Because it's feeling like it's already kind of setting up for that. Ah, don't worry, Rosalina. The war won't start until a while yet. Okay, never mind. Until then, I'll stay here with you. Whether he sensed her unease or not, Laplace smiled as he spoke. So, come on. Make me something to eat. My stomach has been growling for a while now. Yes. Prompted by his words, Rosalina returned to the kitchen and resumed cooking. She made soup, grilled meat, and added vegetables. Before she knew it, it was done. But when she tasted it, she couldn't tell if it had any flavor. Yeah, some anxieties there. It's delicious, as always. Laplace ate the meal and said so. But was it really delicious? What's wrong, Rosalina? You're awfully quiet today. Master. Do you really have to go to war? At that question, Laplace blinked in surprise for a moment, but then his face turned serious, and he nodded. Yes, I must go, especially if he's involved. Why? Why? That question slipped out from somewhere beyond Rosalina's own will. She hadn't meant to ask. She thought she shouldn't, but she did. I see. You're right. I had forgotten. I never finished telling you, did I? So, you don't know. Huh? I'll tell you. If you listen, you'll understand what happened after that in the Dragon World. No, in all the worlds. What my mission is and why I must fight him. Juicy deets. We're getting the juicy deets. Here it comes. At those words, Rosalina hesitantly asked, "Are you sure? You want to talk about it?" "It's not something I wish to forget. It's painful and it's tragic, but the past should not be forgotten. I will tell you all of it so that I won't forget it." Laplace spoke as if making a firm decision. "Sit down, Rosalina, or do you not want to hear it?" At those words, Rosalina swallowed hard. I was going to say she sat down really quickly. She wanted to hear it. What happened in Laplace's life? What had befallen him as one of the 5 dragon generals? He was the one who brought it up. There was no way she didn't want to hear it. No way that she didn't want to know. "Please, tell me." And so she took her seat, the seat beside Laplace, her usual place. "All right then, I'll tell you the conclusion of the story of the Dragon World." And with that, Laplace began to speak. The final story of the Demon Dragon King, Laplace, one of the 5 dragon generals. Chapter 13, The Dragon Diplomat. Now, before we get to the main topic, let's first go over the roles of the 5 dragon generals. As I mentioned before, each of the 5 dragon generals was assigned a specific duty by the Lord Dragon God. Lady Dola was in charge of taming dragons. Maxwell handled the extermination of monsters. Chaos oversaw the forging of weapons and armors. Szilard managed the dragon warriors. In addition to these official duties, there was also covert operations. But let's set those aside for now. As one of the 5 dragon generals, I was given a specific role. That role was to assist Lord Dragon God. You could call it a bodyguard position, but honestly, being a personal attendant is probably a more accurate description. I was to stay close to Lord Dragon God, who was constantly traveling from place to place, protecting him, offering advice, bringing him drinks, handling all sorts of miscellaneous tasks. It might sound like a menial job, but for a newly appointed member of the 5 dragon generals like me, it was a fitting assignment. More importantly, it allowed me to remain by Lord Dragon God's side at all times. There was no greater honor. Yeah, and I guess the idea that over time he can potentially learn from him as well, because it never implied that he's ever trained under him, and again, it implied that the others got stronger by being under him. Naturally, the other 5 dragon generals weren't happy about it. Every single one of them respected, feared, and worshipped Lord Dragon God. For a newcomer like me to be granted such an honorable position, there was no way they'd be pleased. Of course, even if they were dissatisfied, they didn't voice their complaints. Given my standing, being an attendant was an appropriate duty, and they had no real reason to oppose it. And so I accompanied Lord Dragon God as we traveled to other worlds. There's confirmation there that others can go with him. Teleportation magic hadn't been perfected yet, but there was still ways to traverse worlds. In every world, there was always an altar somewhere. This is going to be the opening to the Barren Lands, isn't it? In every world, there was always an altar somewhere. When Lord Dragon God arrived at one, the altar would activate, transporting us to a barren space. A place of pure white void. And that's going to be the place that Orsted has to get to, or at least he has to get the ability to go through that gate. So somewhere in the human world, there's going to be a gate like this, an altar like this, and it's just possibly there's something that's needed to open it up to get to the Barren Lands. And that's what eventually they will do to get in there to seal him away. It's just the question mark is, why do they have to be destroyed for this to happen when Lord Dragon God was doing it? Why is he able to get through it? Unless it's just, they're implying it takes a great amount of power and strength. The possibility here is that they have to be removed in order to gain that power to open up the door. The key is the question mark. By passing through that void, we could reach another world's altar. The first place we arrived at, a world shrouded in poison miasma. That's right, the demon world. Yeah. This place is. Stepping down from the altar, I took in the scene before me and froze. The demon world, a place filled only with bitter memories for me. Naturally, I'd expected that returning here would stir up my resentment and anger. What's wrong? It's nothing. But now that I had grown up, things were a little different. Maybe because I had matured. I found that the cities of the demon world I had once longed for no longer interested me. I don't need you guys no more. You guys didn't want me. I got a better place. There was no hatred. Even the beast wandering in the distance only felt nostalgic. I suppose that meant I had no lingering attachments to this place anymore. Let's go. Understood. Without saying where he was heading, Lord Dragon God took off into the sky. I didn't ask any foolish questions. I simply followed. His destination was the heart of the demon world, a massive crater, so vast it could be mistaken for a mountain range from afar. Countless homes lined its interior, and at the center stood a towering black iron fortress, the heart of the demon world, and the demon god's castle, Gylek. As we approached the castle, I noticed bonfires burning in a circular formation on the rooftop. Without hesitation, Lord Dragon God descended into the center of that circle. Surrounding us stood countless demons. There were many different types. Some had multiple arms. Others had beast-like legs. Some emitted a faint, phosphorescent glow, while others had no eyes at all. None of them looked particularly welcoming towards Lord Dragon God and me. They didn't openly show hostility, but the tension in the air made their feelings clear. Ha 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 ha! Lord Dragon God, welcome. I could do a bodyguardy voice. Even though it's probably not bodyguardy. It can't be bodyguardy. Amidst the tense atmosphere, one demon stepped forward. Unlike the others, he exuded a sense of openness. He laughed heartily and approached us with a friendly demeanor. However, the moment he saw me, he stopped. His smile vanished, and his face turned serious. I, too, was at a loss for words. When I saw him, I recognized him. As the one that was beating him up, dark skin, 6 arms, long purple hair, and a bare upper body. The sight of him made me shudder. Long ago, even by time standards, a very long time ago, back when I still lived in the demon world, there had been a man who had beaten me down countless times. Back when I tried to enter the city, only to be chased away over and over again. Yes, that's exactly who he was. This man is my bodyguard, one of the 5 dragon generals, the Demon Dragon King Laplace. Lord Dragon God's words suddenly broke the silence between me and the Demon King. Hearing those words reminded me why I had been chosen as one of the 5 dragon generals and why I was here. I immediately bowed deeply and introduced myself. I am the Demon Dragon King Laplace. It is an honor to make your acquaintance. The Demon King looked at me like he was thinking for a brief moment, and then, ha ha ha, I am one of the 8 great Demon Kings. Now cross, lacrosse. Okay. Okay. There's a big one. Remember my name well. Then he laughed heartily once again. He's got a bodyguardy laugh, apparently. Bah-ha-ha-ha-ha. So what was the purpose of traveling to another world? A meeting. The gods of each world regularly held meetings. I believe I mentioned this before. Naturally, these meetings continued to this day. The location rotated, but the dragon world, the sky world, and the sea world were rarely chosen. After all, every god had attendants like me, and some of them couldn't fly or swim. I just thought about that. Yeah, those 3 are kind of rough for that situation. That logistical issue made these worlds impractical for hosting them. So I guess they took that into consideration. But in any case, this was a meeting of gods. They were mostly about recent issues afflicting each world, namely the appearance of monsters and sudden occurrences of teleportation. Every world was struggling to deal with these problems, but no solutions had been found yet. In fact, by the time I started attending these meetings, standing behind Lord Dragon God and observing, the gods' relationships had already become strained. Is that implying the idea? They're saying that specifically it's about the teleportation and the monsters' appearances and stuff, and that's causing a strain. Is it an element that they think that the other sides are causing these problems, or they want it to be fixed, or it's causing some sort of rift? I'm curious what the rift is being caused by. What's straining it? More monsters. An entire town has been wiped out. One of our leaders disappeared due to teleportation. It started a war that cost thousands of lives. Huh. There's already rumors that your side has already completed research on teleportation. I hope this isn't your own doing. What did you say? Do you believe in such baseless rumors? Then allow me to believe the rumor that you are one creating the monsters. Yeah, there they go. They're blaming each other. They think they're causing the issues. A man with numerous tentacles growing out from his mouth and slimy, squid-like skin, the sea god. A man with twin heads of a dog and a cat, mounted on a white wolf, the beast god. Okay, the squid-like dude, I was like, okay, I get that. A man with twin heads, a dog and a cat, mounted on a white wolf. Are they sitting on the white wolf? Are the heads the heads of the wolf, or they? Anyways, I think they're sitting on a white wolf. But a man with twin heads of a dog and a cat, a 2-headed beast folk? Huh, a beautiful man with 2 eyes on his forehead and 6 wings sprout out from his back, the sky god. A towering man over 3 meters tall, possessing 8 arms and 6 horns, the demon god. The relationship between these 4 in particular was hostile. There's the answer to my question. Remember, I kept talking about how it seems so odd how these people were so dead set on how they didn't like the other worlds and the people of those worlds. Why were the dragon folk so dead set on the demons being after them? They're coming after us. They're trying to start a war. They want to come and kill us all. How would they know this if they can't traverse those worlds? They've never met these demons. They're not traveling to they said only the gods themselves are traveling around. How they have this stuck in their heads? Yes, one answer is that we've confirmed in this particular chapter is that the dragon god's able to take these individuals to the other worlds, so there's a good chance that he took the generals to there at some point. But this is the answer right here. It's because these gods are stirring up crap. I thought the gods were fine with each other. I thought it was just the people that were stirring up things. They were paranoid of the other worlds and the people of the other worlds, and then for some reason had some sort of hatred for them. And it could come from the fact that, yes, they just randomly show up via teleportation, or there's just rumors, baseless rumors going around that since there is other worlds and they have different people, that now that we have these monsters showing up, obviously it's their fault. Obviously their fault. It's coming from the gods. The gods are stirring it up. That's a shock to me. I wanted to think the gods were all about, like, working together and, spreading some knowledge between each other, helping each other out. They're helping each other out. They're giving each other knowledge, especially the human god. They pretty much laid him as being like the leader of them and everything. They're the ones that are going back to their home world and telling the people they're doing this. That's why the worlds hate each other. The gods themselves are telling their people they're doing this. Now, it begs the question as to why specifically in the dragon world this is the case, because it doesn't seem like the dragon god is doing this. It seems like he's trying to keep them from fighting. It seems like he's trying to keep them together and show the other sides, we're not after you. We're fine. We're not going to attack you. We want peace between us. But it could be simply one of two things here. When he brings the gods over to here, on a rare occasion, as they kind of mentioned, when they bring the gods over here, the people are seeing that hostility from these gods and the other individuals that might be coming in there with him. Or, additionally, when he brings the generals, potentially the generals to other worlds with him, like he's doing with Laplace here, which seems to be an answer here that he can bring people with them, that they're seeing that hostility elsewhere, and they're bringing that back. This sucks. Okay. I wanted these gods to be good people, and it seems like they're the ones causing the problems. They're the ones with the paranoia. They're assuming this. And I get this. The lives of their people in their world is resting upon their shoulders, and they fear for their world to be destroyed. They have that hostility and that paranoia because they're trying to protect their people. They're trying to protect their world. Every time they faced each other in meetings, they exchanged insults. Their words were brimming with such hostility that it seemed a fight could break out at any moment. Despite the dignity of the gods, the sheer intensity of their wrath and the overwhelming power emanating from their bodies made them truly terrifying. I can imagine that. You have all these gods that are literally like right there with, like, again, fragments of the god themselves, the creator god, and they're just in this little room emanating energy. No, please calm down. It is not in our best interest to be fighting like this. Do not worry. The research is progressing smoothly, and we will surely uncover the cause. Do not be deceived by baseless rumors. That's right. There is no point in us fighting. If we were to battle, it would only lead to suffering of our people. Among them, only 2 individuals tried to prevent a conflict. Our great Lord Dragon God, and a man whose entire appearance seemed as if it was covered in mosaic, making it strangely difficult to remember the human god. Yeah, and they're confirming once again that it's mosaic. It wasn't just the fact that he wasn't able to remember him, it's just strictly like, right here, it's a mosaic. Something's covering him. It's odd that of all of them, he has a mosaic. That's really odd. Each of them are kind of falling into like a sort of formula, like, oh, this is obviously demon because they have multiple arms and horns. That's a demon. It has a dog face and a cat face. Obviously a beast folk. A tentacle thing is obviously a sea folk. A winged thing, that's obviously a sky folk. Why human? You would think human would just be, he looks like a human. No, he's mosaic. You can't get his appearance. It's odd. If not for those two, the worlds would be long since rejecting each other, and war would have already begun. Upon hearing the human god's words, all the gods fell silent. The human god was widely respected. Again, that's what my assumption was. Because he's done so much to help the others, they're going to listen to him. The problem is until how long? At what point they're going to finally stop? Not only was he the founder of these meetings, but due to the rapid advancements in humanity, he frequently provided guidance to other gods. Simply put, what he had given far exceeded what he had received. That is why everyone respected and acknowledged the human god. Even Lord Dragon God was no exception. Huh, you put on a composed face, Dragon God. Yet the demon god did not remain silent, and his next words were enough to make me tremble. I heard rumors that you kidnapped my son, Necrolia, tortured him, and ultimately killed him. At those words, I trembled internally. A statement like that could easily ignite a war with the demon world, and I knew very well that this rumor was true. The dragon folk had their own justifications, but if he were to answer honestly, war would be inevitable. It is nothing more than a rumor. I know of no such person. The dragon god lied. Huh. Okay, he's choosing to just keep it a secret. Again, what his response was to the generals was, it's an eye for an eye. We lost somebody, they lost somebody. Stop there. And right here, he's being confronted by this, and he's going, I don't know what you're talking about. Why? Because if he brings up that, yes, he came over and attacked us, and we killed him, it's going to turn into the whole thing of he said, she said. Who's going to believe who? And it's going to turn into a war. So just act like it never happened. We lost somebody, they lost somebody, move on. The question here is, why does he know about this? Why is there rumor that they somehow managed to get his boy? Now, his boy, again, could have disappeared. And again, I do have my theory around the idea that Crystal accidentally summoned him, and he popped up out of nowhere, killed him, and then ran away. There's still that theory that I have there, but they could go on the idea that because my son disappeared, I'm obviously going to blame you. Why would they say specifically the dragon folk? There is a conflict between the two of them that seems to be drumming up so that I could see that. But interesting nonetheless. I had thought that he was someone who could never lie, so I was a little surprised. No, it was only natural. If he spoke the truth, he would have to address the fact that Necrolia had killed Crystal. The end result would be a heated argument and war. Perhaps the demon god was provoking this confrontation on purpose, but we could not afford to take that bait. Lord Dragon God chose a different path. More importantly, Dragon God, look at this man. Lord Dragon God directed everyone's gaze towards me, standing right behind him. I immediately offered my deepest bow. I had to ensure that I did not bring shame to Lord Dragon God. He's bringing him up because he's a half-breed? A half-breed of dragonfolk and demon? Now that you mention it, you did say that you took someone from my world. So, what of it? I have made him a high-ranking official of the dragonfolk, a proof that we have no intent to be enemies with the demons. The demon god snorted as he looked at me. He scrutinized me. His eyes were shining. They quite literally shone. That was probably some kind of demon eyes. Yeah, I was kind of wondering for a minute there. And after looking at me with those demon eyes, the demon god leaned back into his chair. Very well, I shall believe you. Huh. I wonder what the demon eyes showed him. The demon eyes just basically showing him that he is demon folk. Though I had been taken in for this very purpose, this was the first time I had ever been useful. At least for now, a direct clash with the demon world and the dragon world had been avoided. That was easy. I do not desire war either. At the very least, it seemed that even the demon god did not wish to go to war with the dragon world. No, not just the demon god. None of the gods truly wished for a great war. They were irritated, they wanted answers, and doubted each other. But still, they had no desire for a full-scale war. That was how these meetings always were. Perhaps in the past, they had been much more amicable. But at this time, everyone was on edge and ready for conflict. Though the meetings were meant to exchange information, little of substance was ever discussed. Nobody wanted to share valuable information with a potential culprit. It was an unpleasant space to be in. That is so freaking agitating. Oh my gosh, they come together. It implies the idea here that, yes, early on, it was like to get together and exchange information. The Haman God was trying to help them out and give them sort of advancements for the society, and it helped everybody. But then eventually, yes, it seems like somebody started looking into teleportation. Somebody's trying to get into summoning and teleportation. It could be summoning, and it's causing teleportations. But either way, somebody's researching something, it's triggering that to happen, and there's a chance that a lot of monsters are coming because of that. But I also sort of theorize the idea that this is just, again, a casualty of the original creation of these worlds. They're imbalanced, they have problems, and that problem could be like sort of a distortion in the mana between the worlds, the way that it's flowing to each one of them. And the fact that he put all these together could be for the sake of them exchanging mana. But there's some sort of distortion happening there, and that could be causing the monsters to appear. And then as it gets worse, there are going to be more that are going to be appearing. And additionally, it could be triggering these displacement incidents, basically. These displacements are happening on a regular basis. So it could be somebody's researching summoning or teleportation, or it could just be simply the worlds are unstable. And it's causing paranoia. They used to be friends, getting together, exchanging information, all this kind of stuff. And at this point, they're going, somebody's causing this. Who's doing it? But they don't want to share information because they don't know if the person that's doing it is a culprit, is in the room. Sucks. And so, improving that unpleasant atmosphere was essentially my mission. I was entrusted with diplomacy. Of course, that did not mean I was befriending the other gods. My role was to establish good relations with the subordinates of the other gods. Interesting. In other words, those like me, the errand boys. Even though they were considered errand boys, they were still people of significant standings in their respective worlds, just like me. If I built trust with them, it could help me prevent the worst case scenario in times of crisis. That was the underlying intent. The first people I reached out to were those of the demon world, as tensions between our sides had been growing increasingly worse. The people of the dragon world were becoming more hostile towards the demon world. Judging by the meeting that day, it seemed the same was true on the other side. That was why I believed establishing connection with the demon world was path to peace. Sir Necros Lacrosse. After the meeting ended, I approached a large and imposing man. Indeed, I am one of the 8 great demon kings, the immortal demon king, Necros Lacrosse. Necros Lacrosse turned around and was about to laugh heartily, but upon seeing me, his expression turned serious. You are. His sharp, rugged face twisted into a troubled manner as he glared at me. I'm surprised he can speak their language. I mean, this could be like a oopsie thingy. Like, we're not going to really kind of explain this whole situation here, but, I mean, Necros Lacrosse could know dragon folk language, but that does sort of beg the question of what were they speaking at the meeting? Are they all speaking dragon god tongue so that, Laplace can know what they're talking about? It's not that big of a deal. His sharp, rugged face twisted into a troubled manner as he glared at me. It would not be surprising if he had assumed that I was there for revenge. That was why I spoke first. Allow me to formally introduce myself. I'm one of the 5 dragon generals, the demon dragon king, Laplace. I'm not an unnamed humanoid beast. I am Laplace. I got a name now. At those words, Necros Lacrosse shifted into the demeanor of a true demon king. I later learned, at that very moment, he had decided not to bring up the past. And I, too, had no intentions of bearing any grudge against him. That's cool. Because there was no point. Much had changed between then and now. Lately, bad rumors of the demon world have been spreading throughout the dragon world. I was hoping to assist in dispelling them. Oh, I have no objection to that. However, I've heard that dragon folks harbor hatred toward the demons. The fact that I, a half-dragon folk, half-demon, was chosen as one of the 5 dragon generals, that alone should serve as proof that these rumors are nothing more than baseless gossip. Lord Dragon God desires peace. If the demon god does not seek conflict, then I ask for your cooperation. Please. As I spoke, Necros Lacrosse crossed all 6 of his arms and looked down at me. I stood firm, accepting his rude, scrutinizing gaze head-on. He was probably trying to see through any lies I might be telling. Depending on how one looks at it, my appointment could also be interpreted as a mere ploy by the dragon folk to lower the demon's guard. I mean, he's not lying. Or simply the idea of him using him as like a pet. I mean, you can be still wanting to destroy the other side while using their people as cannon fodder. Using them as weapons, basically. After some time, Necros Lacrosse gave me a grand nod. Lord Demon God does not seek war either. Lately, too many strange occurrences have been happening, which has put him in a foul mood. But that's all. Then, very well, I shall cooperate with you. And so, I formed an alliance with Necros Lacrosse. Cool. From that point on, I worked alongside him to gather allies across various worlds. Since I had to follow along with the gods' meetings, it took quite some time, but I was able to travel to every world. That's cool. I mean, that's an interesting concept there because, again, the idea here is that he's not going to be able to confront all the actual gods. Go to the demon god and say, hey, guy, let's be friends or whatever. He's not going to be able to communicate to them. So he can at least go to each one of their generals, so to speak, and speak to them directly and hopefully dispel a lot of that confusion and help each other. This is a sad state of these meetings. The gods themselves are bickering in these freaking tables. They used to be friends, they used to be helping each other out, but now they're bickering at each other at these tables. All the while their subordinates are out here now gathering together with Laplace and doing what the gods were doing initially, helping each other out. So you have the gods over here bickering about the situation. Over here, the subordinates are trying to fix the damn issues and actually talk to each other, communicate. It's pretty sad. There was a sea world, a world of endless sea, where no land existed, and its inhabitants bore gills, fins, and scales. It was a shocking sight. After all, I had never been to the sea before. The demon world barely had any water, let alone seas, and while the dragon world had waterfalls and lakes, there was nothing that could be truly called an ocean. So does the water go down into the sky and just disappear? Where does it go? There was nothing that could be truly called an ocean, and yet before me stretched an endless expanse of water, a world so monotonous that it even inspired a sense of fear. Of course, the sea's surface was empty, but beneath the waves, life thrived. Yeah, I can see that being kind of a little bit unsettling to go to a world and all it is just blue water. Just like no land, just blue water. Then there was a beast world, a world of vast forests and towering mountains that stretched on and on. That, too, was astonishing. The dragon world had mountains and trees as well. However, this world was entirely green, overflowing with life within its dense forests. The sheer density of it all was staggering. Every step revealed an abundance of insects and reptiles. Compared to the other worlds, which often had vast empty spaces, this one was alive with activity. Although, since you came from the Great Forest, you might not find this surprising. A little lore information there that she's from the Great Forest. And that the Great Forest is, it doesn't surprise me the Great Forest was already there before the split. The Sky World was a world of floating land masses, where only those who could fly could live. It closely resembled that of the Dragon World. However, while the Dragon World's land lay above in this world, the ground was below. That ground, however, was covered in salt, with a shallow layer of water pulled on top. The water was barely ankle deep, and when I tasted it, it was salty. One could even call it a sea. Considering how saturated the salt was, regardless, it was not a place suited for life, and creatures lived in the sky, and most of them were covered in feathers. That's an interesting way of describing that. Because again, that was my question mark there is like, well, how does that make it like only the sky folk can live there? And the idea here is that the land itself is covered in salt water, and nothing can really survive down there. Huh. All the creatures lived in the sky, and most of them were covered in feathers. Looking back now, it was a beautiful world, but having only ever seen creatures covered in scales, those feathered beings struck me as eerie. Then there was the human world, a world of endless grassland. The slightly undulating plains stretched as far as the eye can see. The forests were not large enough to be called forests, and the mountains were not tall enough to be called mountains. It was simply an environment perfectly suited for human habitation, and the people who lived there were astonishingly fragile. That goes back to the whole idea of, like, it kind of makes me understand sort of, like, a lot of the potential jealousy that the others will have, and the idea that the human world seemed to have it really good. Now, again, they technically mention the fact that they were being poisoned by the mana, so that whole aspect there, that they were just dying away, but, like, the world seems nice, and I could see them kind of going, why do we have poison lands? I want what they got. At the time, I wondered how such weak creatures could even survive, though I later learned that they had grown stronger than they had before. Compared to the other races, they were like infants. And yet, the world was far more advanced than the others. Tall buildings stood in rows. Roads had been built, and armies were created. Even if they were weak, as long as they had no natural predators, they could rule their world. In these worlds, I gradually gathered more allies. It took time, but once others learned that Necros Lacrosse had given his approval, the rest was easy. No one wanted to pick a fight with the Dragon World or the Demon World. After all, compared to the other worlds, the inhabitants of these two worlds possessed overwhelming combat prowess. And when representatives of both worlds loudly proclaimed a path to peace, even those who remained skeptical had no choice but to go along with it. That's some solid logic there. Again, it does kind of beg the question of how do we get from here to where we get to later on? Where is the break here? Unless somebody just ends up, like, again, working puppeteering in the background to get somebody killed again. Despite being swayed by weird rumors, the people of these worlds still longed for peace. Whenever the gods gathered for their meetings, I assembled their guards and held our own discussions. Again, they're having the proper meetings over here. What should be done from here on out? What was needed for lasting peace? I voiced my thoughts as concretely as possible and fostered constructive discussion. Of course, not everything went smoothly. Yeah, and I can see this is the other thing I was going to talk about earlier was that, yes, the other positive thing here is that the gods themselves will be in communication with them, and they could potentially sway the gods, or at least calm their worries. There could be a lot of cases where if they have anxieties, those anxieties will be expressed to the gods, and the gods will then express that to the others. Of course, not everything went smoothly. Why, you ask? Because the faces attending these meetings as guards kept changing, particularly amongst the beast folk and humans. Compare the dragon folk and the demons. Their lives were mere moments, yeah, true. Their lifespans were short. The sky folks lived longer, but even they had frequent changes. Well, the hope there is that whoever was there before will then tell the next in line, hey, be aware, we're trying to work something out here. They should pass the baton and inform them. The sky folk lived longer, but even they had frequent changes. The sea folk had wildly varying lifespans, depending on the individual, so the members changed irregularly.
And when the people changed, their personalities changed as well. Some new members openly expressed hostility towards other races, but I never gave up. Together with Necros Lacrosse, I worked tirelessly to unite them. The gods had no intentions of fighting, and so we, too, should follow their will and seek a path to peace. As those who were closest to the gods, we must take the lead and serve as examples. Some changed their minds, while others did not, but at the very least, there were times when everyone was in agreement, and during those moments, progress was made. Of course, meetings weren't the only thing we did. We took action for the sake of peace. Some things worked, some things didn't, but we tried everything we could. The most effective measure was personnel exchange. We sent individuals to live at each other's worlds. If we performed well there, it would improve the perception of other races, just as was my case. Like, foreign exchange system here? I don't like this. That sounds like a disaster. I mean, it's a positive thing here, but it's kind of a disaster waiting to happen. They go over there and somebody ends up offing somebody else or causing a death, and they just kind of immediately assume it was the foreign entity that caused the problem. There were worlds, like the Sea World, that only a few could visit, but with the assistance of the gods, it wasn't impossible. The Dragon World brought in engineers from other worlds. The Dragon World was full of mighty warriors, but it lagged behind in technological advancements, preservation techniques, paper making, agriculture. Rather than having Lord Dragon God relay knowledge verbally, bringing in specialists was far faster. Lord Dragon God had faithfully conveyed all the technologies he brought back from the other worlds to the Dragon World, leaving nothing aside. However, technology is something that advances daily. By the time the Dragon Folks fully mastered a technology, it often had already become outdated. The long lifespans of the Dragon Folks and our slow-paced approach to technology development were also contributing factors. By the time he's slowly explains everything, it's been 100 years. They're just slowly working on it for 10 years, and it's oh, we're already into the next thing. By having skilled craftsmen within our world help resolve this issue. Conversely, the Dragon World sent dragon warriors to other worlds. The Dragon Folk were strong. From the perspective of the other worlds, their power was godlike. Truly an overwhelming force. These dragon warriors ventured into other worlds and undertook monster extermination. That's a positive thing there. Again, if they can not have any issues and oopsies and, again, sabotage, it was around this time that I learned something. The strength of monsters varies depending on the world. The more powerful the native creatures of the world, the stronger its monsters. Yep. And in comparison to all the other worlds, the monsters of the Dragon World were the strongest. Our dragon warriors, who battled against these ultimate creatures, proved to be outstanding in other worlds. At the same time, they also became feared. But let's set aside that for now. Yeah, powers can create fear. Many different engineers came to the Dragon World. Among them, one woman from the Demon World stood out. The Demon Empress, Kishirishu. I thought it was going to be Kishirishu. The Demon Empress, Karishishu. My gosh. Karishishishu, the wife of the demon god. She was more concerned than anyone else about the growing hostility between the Dragon World and the Demon World. That's why she took the initiative to come to the Dragon World herself. She was capable of advanced magic. Not magic techniques, but magic. It's difficult to explain the difference between magic and magic techniques. Both involve manipulating mana to create supernatural phenomena. However, I suppose one could say that magic allows for more advanced feats without requiring incantations or magic circles. So magic techniques is like drawing a magic circle, doing an incantation, like the OG concepts that were presented in Volume 1. In Volume 1 of Mushoku Tensei, he's having to do an incantation, or at least he's looking at incantations or whatever, and then we have later on, we find out that people can literally make those into magic circles to create the same effect. That's magic techniques. But just straight magic allows for advanced feats and requires no incantation or magic circles. That's like incantationless magic, like the ability to just do it without it. Though those are sort of both in the same, right? Because incantationless spells it's still the presence of that in order to create the effect. So I'm wondering if it's different things, but it could be implying the same thing here. In fact, she was the one who first created the magic circles. It would not be exaggeration to say that she is the root of the foundation of many forms of modern magic techniques that exist today. She dedicated herself to the Dragon World. Again, odd, I seem to remember they were saying specifically that the elves were the ones that kind of created the concept of magic. It was like a lot to do with like the spirits and whatnot. Again, that could be just based on the humans themselves and where they got it from. So it could be different here. She dedicated herself to the Dragon World. While the Dragon World had conducted some research into power, Every aspect of it saw dramatic advancements thanks to her contributions. In the Dragon World, demons were widely regarded as savage and foolish. However, many revised their perception after witnessing her. She was intelligent, capable, and peaceful. In some ways, she even reminded me of Lady Lunaria, though personality-wise, they were nothing alike. Perhaps that's why. No, this probably wasn't the only reason. But she and Lady Lunaria grew especially close. As wives of gods, they must have shared a mutual understanding. Thanks to the efforts of Kadishishu, and me, both hailing from the demon world, the hostility towards the demons gradually faded within the dragon world. Even Chaos, who had been openly antagonistic towards the demon world, no longer displayed that hostility. Even helped him out. My hard work had finally borne fruit. Things were progressing smoothly. Meetings with the other races became more relaxed over time. Teleportation incidents and monster appearances still occurred, but the fact that we no longer had to suspect our neighbors seemed to have a positive effect. Even Lord Dragon God praised my efforts. Now, when good things happen, they tend to come in waves. And then, even greater news arrived. Lady Lunaria had given birth. Holy... Dude, how long did it take for her to pump that? Girl taking her time. Girl legit taking her time. Holy crap. Like, we're talking like 5 centuries later... 3,000 years later, Lady Lunaria had given birth. The child of Lord Dragon God had been born. Chapter 14, The Birth Festival. And then... ... I don't like that title. To tell the truth, until then, the Dragon World had no tradition of holding festivals. Perhaps because we lived such long lives, the idea of gathering in large numbers to celebrate something was rather foreign to us. But this time was different. The entire Dragon World was in a festive mood. Of course, it was only natural. After all, the child of Lord Dragon God, whom everyone revered, and Lady Lunaria, whom everyone adored, had finally been born. At Silar's command, a grand parade was held on the Dragon War Mountain. Maxwell traveled across the Dragon World and gathered dragon meat. Even the dragons under training at Lady Dola's domain were treated to feasts for days on end. Chaos, using knowledge from the human world, created fireworks to further enliven the parade. People from all over the Dragon World gathered with the hopes to just catch a glimpse of Lord Dragon God's child. And it wasn't just a day or two. The festival lasted for 10, then 20 years. I hate this so much. Stop, Refugin. Stop. Oh my gosh, dude. 20-year festival. Since the dragon folk had long lifespans, our joy endured for just as long. I believe the celebrations went on for about 100 years. Oh my god, dude. Everyone looked so happy. That was the only time I'd ever saw the Dragon World so overjoyed. Lord Dragon God and I arrived at the festival a little late. What, like 20 years late? When we had been attending a meeting of the gods. But of course, the moment Lord Dragon God returned, the people welcomed him with resounding cheers. It all happened so suddenly that I couldn't make sense of it at first. But Lord Dragon God immediately understood what was going on. Without hesitation, he hurried back home. Naturally, I followed. When we arrived, our family was there to greet us. Welcome home, my lord and Laplace. Lady Lunaria, her attendants, and then there was Lady Lunaria's beautiful child, held in her arms like a precious jewel. My lord, the baby has been born. So it seems. Even Lord Dragon God, for whom this was his own child, appeared slightly bewildered. He wasn't one to smile often, so his expression was serious as usual. But I could tell he was happy. Please, hold him. Ah. Lord Dragon God received the young master from Lady Lunaria, but there was a slight trembling. Even this big Papa Bear is like trying to be gentle. It's a strange feeling. I always thought the people of the Dragon World as my own children, but this one feels a little special. My lord, please give the child a name. At her words, Lord Dragon God stared at Lady Lunaria intently. Me? Yes. Watching them, I couldn't help but feel nostalgic. That's right. When I was taken in, a similar conversation had taken place. I see. However, Lord Dragon God suddenly fell silent. It was unusual for him, as he was a type to make decisions quickly, after careful consideration. What's the matter? I can't think of one. You must. It's the duty of the husband to name a child. I know, but right now, I just can't think. I'll think about it. All right. Thus, the young master's name wasn't decided right away. Teasing it. Teasing it. Teasing it. That's so on purpose. It's teasing it. Lord Dragon God wasn't indecisive. On the contrary, he was a man of swift and resolute decisions. But naming a being that was practically his own extension was different than naming someone like me. He pondered over it for a long time. At times, he even asked for my opinion. Of course, I couldn't give a proper response. How could I? How could someone like me dare to name Lord Dragon God's child? If, by some absurd chance, my suggestion was actually chosen? Even now, the thought alone is enough to make my head go blank with fear. But let's set that aside for now. After holding the baby for a while, Lord Dragon God returned the young master to Lady Lunaria. She then walked over to where I stood, as I watched from the corner of the room. Laplace, you should hold the child too. Seeing Lord Dragon God lost in thought, Lady Lunaria spoke those words. I was shocked. Could I really do something so audacious? Me? Is that truly alright? Of course. He is your younger brother after all. That's sweet. Technically, since I was considered an adopted child, this was true. Still, I had always known my place. I was not Lord Dragon God's child after all. Not truly. I no longer... Come on, man. I no longer saw myself as merely a pet, but I was aware of my position. If I ever forgot the gratitude I owed for being taken in and began acting arrogantly, I would not hesitate to kill myself. Oh my gosh, dude. Stop. And yet, Lady Lunaria said I should hold him. She called him my younger brother. I was not so stubborn or inflexible to refuse her kindness. Yes. I took the young master into my arms. His body was much warmer than that of the other dragonfolk. No, perhaps that was simply because he was a newborn. As I nervously held him, I studied his face, worried the young master might be uncomfortable. The child bore a striking resemblance to Lord Dragon God. The same silver hair, the same sharp features. He looked extremely angry. He looked really angry. That's just my face. That's my face. Sorry. The same silver hair, the same sharp features. Even the color of his scales were identical. Though, as a half-human, he had fewer scales than full-blooded dragonfolk. Notably, his face had almost no scales at all. Looking back now, his mixed heritage made the pattern of his scales somewhat similar to mine. Interesting. No, it would be far too disrespectful to claim any resemblance between myself and the young master. Laplace, calm down, dude. Yet, as I held the young master, I felt something stir within me. This child would one day lead the dragon world. It would be my duty to support him. I must protect him, no matter what. That thought filled my heart. And it sucks where it ends up going direction of. After that, the other dragon generals arrived one after another. Szilard, Maxwell, Chaos, and even Lady Dola. Each of them looked upon the young master and was deeply moved. And by the time they left, their expressions had all become solemn. Perhaps they felt the same way I did. It wasn't just the 5 dragon generals. Gods from other worlds came as well. Normally, the other gods did not appear in worlds that were not theirs. But that day was different. The human god, the demon god, the sky god, the sea god, and the beast god all appeared and offered their blessings to the young master. It was a magnificent sight. There's a positive thing coming out of the birth. That is, the birth itself is positive. It's just a positive thing to the situation that they seemingly are coming together for this. It's getting their mind off the situations, and they're collectively coming together for something like this. Of course, it was a magnificent sight. Of course it would be. Gods who rarely ever show themselves had gathered to celebrate the birth of the young master. It was a display of true divine authority. Every citizen of the dragon world must have realized just how extraordinary this birth was. And then, as the festival drew to a close, as the excitement across the dragon world began to settle, she arrived, a woman from the demon world, with dark purple skin and white hair. The demon empress, Kirishishu. Lunaria, congratulations! Kirishishu, I was wondering if you would come. As I mentioned before, Lady Lunaria and... I want to say Kishirishu. I'm going to probably have said at some point, and I'm going to probably have to just, leave it in the edit. As I mentioned before, Lady Lunaria and Kirishishu had become good friends. The moment Lady Lunaria saw her, a smile spread across her face. To be honest, I don't know exactly how close they were. Back then, I was away from home far too often. But seeing them laughing together like that made me think they must have been quite close. If you give birth, of course I'd come running. And yet, you took your time. My research had been going well lately. I kept telling myself I'd come. But when things are progressing smoothly, you just want to keep pushing forward, don't you? Has it been really going that well? Yes, it seems the dragonfolk researchers excel at meticulous observation. At first, I thought they'd be a sluggish bunch. But once they uncovered one thing, they quickly pieced together countless others from their accumulated knowledge. It's exhilarating to watch.
That's an odd observation there. They're a slow bunch, but once they start to figure things out, they're meticulous about it. And again, that sort of implied the idea that, at least with the dragon generals, at least through, Pedagoose and all them, that they all have, the dragon folks themselves all have like some sort of thing they get stuck on. And once they get stuck on that thing, they want to like dig into it as much as possible. I'm guessing she's implying that aspect of them.
I've heard that demon researchers are also quite brilliant. Lunaria, you say the funniest things. Demons are nothing but crude idiots. There's no such thing as an idiot who's a brilliant researcher.
She's like bashing her own people. Oh my gosh. Kirishishu was a woman who laughed often. Actually, it wasn't just Kirishishu. Amongst demons, especially those ranked as demon kings, laughter was common. After laughing heartily, Kirishishu turned her gaze at the young master in Lady Lunaria's arms.
Let me have a look at this baby, the child of the great Lord Dragon God, and my dearest friend Lunaria. Let's see how wise he is. Here you go. Oh, incredible. This one's unbelievably smart, as expected of the Dragonfolk Prince. I can feel the sheer brilliance radiating from him. I can tell this child is growing more intelligent by the second. He'll be quite the wise man in the future, without a doubt.
What's the glazing? What's with the glazing?
This is a smart baby. Look at him, he's smart. He's ready to start solving problems. Get him on the sheet.
Oh, God.
He's gonna cure cancer with that brain of his.
It almost sounded like she was mocking the child, but that was her way of giving praise. Kirishishu, look at Kirishishu already. Kirishishu was one of the more intelligent demons, and her heart was full of kindness, but, well, she wasn't the most eloquent speaker.
You think this child will be that smart? Absolutely. I trust my own eyes. My own son, on the other hand, are all helpless idiots. Every last one. So stupid. Every last one of them has stupid looks on their faces. This one is completely different.
It's like she has a child, she looks at the baby's face and goes,
she's like a stupid idiot. The moment I gave birth to them, I knew they're stupid.
Oh my gosh.
Is that so?
What's that? You're wondering if it's okay for Kirishishu to badmouth her own sons, even though she's the wife of the demon god? You think it might be blasphemous to insult the child of a god? Well, you have a point. Even if Kirishishu had a close relationship with the demon god, speaking ill of the god's children should be an unthinkable offense. However, amongst demons, being brainless and bold wasn't considered a bad thing. A person who was reckless and straightforward was seen as someone trustworthy, someone who could never betray others. That's how demons viewed it. Of course, being intelligent and meticulous wasn't bad either. Both intelligence and foolishness were virtues in the demon world, so Kirishishu wasn't insulting anyone at all. She simply meant the young master would grow into someone quite different from her own sons. Someone exceptional. It's just a difference in values, really. Again, we've seen that with Bodyguardi's story. Bodyguardi was an oddity. Bodyguardi was a total oddity.
Well then, Lunaria, I'll be back. I don't know how long I'll be staying here, but as long as I am, I'll look forward to watching your child's growth with great interest. Yes, please come again. Of course, I'll definitely be back. Well then, farewell.
Laughing loudly, Kirishishu departed. It was quite a grand farewell. I like the demon folks. That was how that person came into this world. He was blessed by all. He was loved. And that was why No, I'll say that for later. If I don't tell this in order, it will only cause confusion. That's why I'm dedicating everything to helping him. For now, the dragon world was filled with happiness. Relations with the demon world were improving smoothly. There was no signs of conflict with the other worlds. Thanks to Kirishishu, research on monsters and teleportation had progressed dramatically. It was an era of peace until that day. Yes, one day, that era of peace came to an abrupt end. Yes, that day. That nightmare of a day. I remember it clearly. On that day, I was with Lord Dragon God, visiting the demon world. As usual, I attended a meeting, and afterward, Necros Lacrosse guided me through the demon world as we discussed future plans. The topics were the exchange of more personnel and the nearly completed teleportation magic circles. Once the teleportation circle was finished, we might finally understand the cause of teleportation incidents, or at the very least, it would allow people
who had been accidentally transported to other worlds to return home safely. Even if it wasn't a complete solution, it would resolve a major issue. A ray of hope was in sight. I mean, I would assume that if they got transported either way, they could just go to a local town and hopefully those people would take them to a location where the gods could take them back to their world. But I guess this gives them a more open thing there. But again, that opens the door to invasions, which I would think would be a concern. When I reported this to Lord Dragon God, a rare thing happened. The one who seldomly smiled gave me a relieved smile and praised me. "You have done well, Laplace. If not for you, this would have taken much longer, as expected of my son." I love it. I love it. I was overjoyed. At that moment, I must have been overflowing with confidence. I stood tall with pride, spreading my wings wide, and declared to the world that I was one of the 5 dragon generals. However, I was struck down from my happy state. I returned the dragon world with Lord Dragon God. I headed home to report the events to Lady Lunaria, to my beloved home. By then, I no longer felt like a mere guest. I considered myself a part of this household. That was why I said it. I'm home. I still see that scene in my dreams. Every time I sleep, I dream of it. Yes, I said it. I'm home. But there was no reply. They got her. Instead of a response, I heard a sound. The sound of a baby wailing. At least the kid's there. A scream so loud it could only be called a shriek. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Babies cry after all. Even the young master cried often. But that time, I had a bad feeling. Something about that cry felt different. I hurried to Lady Lunaria's room, and I saw it. A room drenched in blood. Countless corpses. A scene of carnage. And in the deepest part of that scene lay the last thing I ever wanted to see. It was Lady Lunaria. Lady Lunaria lay there, drenched in blood, curled up, in the center of the room, dead. The baby sobbed with tears streaming down its tiny face, still cradled in her protection. I'm surprised it took them getting to the house before they even knew something happened. This must have just happened. You would think there'd be a welcoming party, an alert at the moment they got there. And this sucks. Again, they're opening the doors to all these people going to different locations, and then something like this happens. Shoot. Chapter 15, Funeral. Lord Dragon God laid eyes upon Lady Lunaria's death and let out a voiceless cry. Oh. His eyes widened, his mouth hung open, and he scanned the room with an expression of disbelief. I did the same. I couldn't believe the scene before me. Lady Lunaria was dead, covered in blood. The one who accepted me, dead. By whom? For what reason? It made no sense. She wasn't the kind of person to harbor enemies. Everyone in the problem is they want conflict. The innocence is the best way to start a conflict. Everyone in the dragon world loved her. The thought of anyone wanting to kill her was unthinkable. But the baby was crying, wailing, almost screaming. A cry of someone who had just lost something irreplaceable. Lord Dragon God's child was crying. That alone brought me back to reality. Oh, I looked at Lord Dragon God. He wore an expression I'd never seen before. He let out a sound I had never heard before. Anger, sorrow, indignation. A face twisted with every emotion imaginable. Confusion, anxiety, shock. A groan filled with all those emotions intertwined. I had never seen Lord Dragon God so overcome with emotions. He crouched down, lifted Lady Lunaria in his right arm, and cradled the young master in his left. Lady Lunaria likely had not died instantly. Her body was covered in wounds. The fatal injuries alone were horrible. 1 to the neck, 3 to the chest, 2 to the stomach, 8 to the back. It was brutal. A person would die long before suffering that much. Yet she had been struck in vital spots over and over again. She was protecting the child. That implies to me she was protecting the child. I mean, she's obviously going to protect the child, but like the idea that she was probably shielding it, stopping somebody from getting to the child, hit multiple times, grabbing the child, covering the child, and being hit, and potentially, again, because it seemed like this has so recently happened, they probably came home and the person fled. The question is, what kind of wounds is this? Are these stabs? Are these claws? It hurts, though, here, kind of seeing a different side of the dragon god, though. It kind of gives this impression like he's very kind of nurturing to people, wanting to keep conflicts from happening. He's all about peace. He does care for his people, sees them as his children. But to see this much emotion out of him is very interesting. Even though Lady Lunaria was a human lineage, she carried the blood of a god. She was kind and full of compassion, someone utterly unrelated to battle. And yet, even she must have resisted fiercely. Even after suffering fatal wounds, she must have stood up again and again, facing her attacker. For what reason? That much was obvious. She had curled up like a shield to protect someone. To protect Lord Dragon God's child, her own son. Yep. For that reason, Lady Lunaria fought back and was mercilessly slaughtered. And definitely, she succeeded. The deep wound on her back, and the fact that the young master was alive proved it. The culprit failed to finish him off and fled. Why? Lord Dragon God muttered under his breath. With those words, he reaffirmed the reality before him. Perhaps he was thinking the same thing I was, that someone had cruelly taken Lady Lunaria's life. Why? His roar shook the house, the entire house, even the mountains. Who killed her? His killing intent spread across the entire dragon world. Every living creature trembled in fear. They felt the wrath of the god and quaked in terror. And there's a reason why. You asking why? Are you asking why? There. From the smallest lizards to the mightiest dragons, even the dragon folk, I was no exception. My whole body shook, and I collapsed on the spot. Even knowing I wasn't responsible, I couldn't suppress my fear. Rah! A flash of light extended from Lord Dragon God's body. To me, it looked like nothing more than light, but it was a fist. A fist carrying all of his uncontainable rage passed right by my side. When I turned around, a massive hole had been blasted into the house. Beyond it, the town of Chaos stretched endlessly, and even further in the distance, another hole had been punched through the landscape. A crater. The force of his strike had pierced the solid rock of Dragon Roar Mountain and shot outward. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I leaked a little at that moment. Okay, I can see that. Because if that blow had just been a bit off, I wouldn't still be here. And had Lord Dragon God stormed out of the house, it wouldn't have been strange for him to destroy everything in his path. But he didn't, because there was one person who felt no fear, the young master. The moment he was lifted into Lord Dragon God's arm, he had stopped crying, sniffling, but looking up at him as if saying, "You're finally here. Now I'm safe." Lord Dragon God looked at the child and calmed, if only slightly. At least one thing still remained for him to protect. I guess he understood that. Laplace. He called my name. Yes, I'm here. Summon the 5 dragon generals. Find the culprit. Yes. I couldn't ask him what he intended to do once the culprit was found. Kill him? What? What kind of... What question is that? Dead? I couldn't ask if we should investigate why this had happened. Lord Dragon God was enraged, more than he'd ever been before, and he'd given the order to summon the 5 dragon generals and track down the culprit. There was nothing to do but obey. The 5 dragon generals gathered immediately. Of course we did. It was a direct summons of Lord Dragon God. Nothing can take priority over that. It would be strange if we didn't gather, especially when Lady Lunaria had been killed. What? Lady Lunaria? The other dragon generals all lowered their heads with solemn expressions. There was no one in the dragon world who disliked Lady Lunaria, and thinking about how Lord Dragon God had lost someone so dear to him, we couldn't help but feel immense sorrow. Lady Lunaria's body had countless wounds. It was clear that someone had inflicted them. I was the one who explained the situation. Lord Dragon God had remained silent until all 5 dragon generals had assembled. He seemed to have calmed down somewhat since the incident at his home, but a menacing aura still seeped from his presence. Once I finished my explanation, Lord Dragon God spoke. Find the culprit and bring him before me. All 5 dragon generals trembled at the sound of his voice. We shuddered at his words. Lord Dragon God was radiating pure fury. None of us had ever seen him like this before, not even when one of the 5 dragon generals, Crystal, had been killed, had he been this enraged. Yeah, it is interesting, because again, with them, they are technically seen as his children, but again, he's seen his own child as different. This is his wife. This is like what seems like someone he really deeply cared about. We will, without fail. The eyes of the 5 dragon generals burn with determination. If it was an order from Lord Dragon God, we would go to the depths of hell itself. Lord Dragon God's anger was our anger as well. We swore to find the one who killed Lady Lunaria. Go. Yes, sir. At the Lord Dragon God's command, the other members of the 5 dragon generals dispersed across the dragon world. Each of them would search for a culprit in their own way. I, too, intended to investigate in my own manner. Laplace, stay. But Lord Dragon God stopped me. He probably wants him to protect his child. I was surprised. After all, I possessed a demon eye. I could see the traces left at the crime scene. Such traces wouldn't vanish immediately, but with time, the culprit could escape far away. No one was more suitable for this task than me. Now he's Mr. Detective after what 10-year-long process of finding the culprit before. I had even captured the culprit responsible for Crystal's murder. I, too, want to avenge Lady Lunaria. However, I had more important role to play. Prepare a funeral for Lunaria, please. Okay. At that moment, I finally understood that Lord Dragon God wasn't just angry. He was grieving. It was obvious in hindsight. But, to be honest, I had never really understood Lord Dragon God's feelings. I hadn't thought that he loved Lady Lunaria that much. I mean, it seems like there is a disconnection here of emotions, but if you think about it, this is somebody that immediately responds to what she says. Name the children. Okay. What do? Do this. It's obvious that he cares for her because he listens to her. He's strong. He shouldn't even have to listen to her. But he does. He had always seemed indifferent. It felt like he kept a certain distance from her, but that wasn't true. Lord Dragon God had loved Lady Lunaria. The way he expressed his love might have been different from others, though. Understood. I bowed deeply, and Lord Dragon God quietly said, I'm counting on you. Funerals in the dragon world were a little unique. First, the deceased was lifted by the closest family member. Normally, this would be a spouse, sibling, or parent. But if the deceased had no family, a friend, colleague, or superior might take the role. The deceased is carried from their home or the place where they died and brought to the center of town. At the center of town stood an altar to ensure the dead would be reborn safely. There, the closest to the deceased offered prayers. I don't remember the exact words, but the prayer was a wish for them to be reborn under the Lord Dragon God's protection in the next life. After the prayer, the procession moves to the edge of the town. Are they going to drop them? They would walk a full circle around the town, keeping their left hand towards the outer edge. Following this custom, Lord Dragon God carried Lady Lunaria, and I carried the young master as we walked around the town. Anyone who saw us carrying the deceased stretched out the palms of their hands and crossed them in front of the chest. When honoring the living, one clenches their fists. When honoring the dead, one does not. That was the dragonfolk salute. Normally people only performed the salute when they saw the deceased pass. But for Lady Lunaria's funeral, nearly every dragonfolk gathered around the inner area of the town. Everyone loved Lady Lunaria. Everyone wanted to see her one last time. After completing the circle, we entered a small, round building. It was made of stone. Its walls were engraved with countless names. Inside the building, many stone tablets bore inscriptions as well. All of them carried names of those who have died in the dragon world. As Lord Dragon God carried Lady Lunaria inside, someone approached him immediately. His wings were tattered, and his body was missing many scales. He was an old man. The dragonfolk had long lifespans, but they were not immortal. All who were born must eventually die. He took upon Lady Lunaria's face, and his expression became solemn. To think that Lady Lunaria has passed. To think. Muttering those words, he wept as he carved her name into the stone monument, using a dragon bone chisel. Normally, names were inscribed on the walls in order, but for someone as special as Lady Lunaria, her name was carved onto a stone monument instead. Naturally, Crystal's name was also inscribed there. This was a burial site, the Dragonfolk Cemetery, a place to ensure the dead were never forgotten. The old man received Lady Lunaria from the Lord Dragon God and carried her deeper into the building. I walked behind him with Lord Dragon God. There, at the far end, was a dark pit, a hole so deep it seemed to lead to another world. Of course, it did not. The hole led to the peak of Dragon Roar Mountain. In other words, to the sky. Yep. That was my assumption. Did they just drop him into the sky? May this soul find peace. May the next life bring fortune. Pray that this person may return to the mountain and serve once more under Lord Dragon God. The old man recited a long prayer. I don't remember the exact words either. However, it was even longer than the ritual that was recited in the center of town. After finishing the prayer, the old man gently placed Lady Lunaria's remains beside the hole. Normally, the body would be dropped into the hole, marking the end of the funeral. The hole led to the sky. If a body emerged from it, it would be devoured by a red dragon, a blue dragon, or perhaps even a giant black serpent lurking below. The dragonfolk had no fixed lifespan, but even they could die outside of battle. In the past, such a death was considered disgraceful. Dying in battle for the sake of the Lord Dragon God, that was deemed honorable. But the Lord Dragon God did not see it that way. He believed that all dragonfolk were equal under him. Thus, he devised this method for burial. That's cool. For those who died of age or illness, he granted them the same end as the warrior would, and their names would be engraved as great warriors. They had lived and died as dragonfolk. However, that funeral was not appropriate for Lady Lunaria. Therefore, after that, a funeral following the customs of the humans was performed. Interesting. So we're going to put her in the ground, I'm guessing? Or burn her body. Lord Dragon God lifted Lady Lunaria's body and returned to his residence. There, in the garden beside the estate, he laid Lady Lunaria's remains to rest. Interesting. With a solemn expression, he conjured flames from his hands and enveloped Lady Lunaria's body. Okay, so we are doing cremation. In an instant, her body was consumed by fire, leaving behind only pure white bones and ash. Together with Lord Dragon God, we buried those bones and ashes in the earth and planted a small sapling above them. This was a funeral custom of the humans. Is it a bit different than how it's done now? But back then, this was the burial method known by the Dragon World. When living beings die, they sometimes transform into monsters. So yeah, they even had a problem with that back then too. That was like a question mark around the idea of even burying them. To prevent this, the bodies burned and buried into the ground. I mean, you also had the fact of wanting to crush the bones too, because even that can turn into living skeletons. And then a tree was planted over the burial site. The tree would absorb the power of the deceased and grow. As long as the tree lived, the living would never forget the dead, a method of mourning befitting the humans, who cannot outlive the trees. Yeah.
Lunaria. I met her through introduction from the human god.
As we dug a hole for Lady Lunaria's burial, Lord Dragon God told me the story of how they met. I simply listened in silence to his words.
At first, it was just an experiment. Could different races produce offspring together? If they could, what kind of power could a child possess? It was all for the sake of the people of the worlds. Many experiments had been conducted, but one day, the human god posed the question, what would happen if two gods had a child?
That was kind of my assumption there, is that he was trying to breed a powerful being. It's just the question mark is like, how much of this is the human god foreseeing? Like he's wanting to create something entertaining or destructive.
And so Lunaria was brought before me. She was a daughter of the human god. Since gods are all male, none of them could bear children. I did not love Lunaria, but she devoted herself to the dragon world. She used her power as the daughter of a god to enrich this world. To me, all dragon folks were like my children. I cherished each and every one of them and wished for their happiness. But the moment a child was born, Lunaria became special to me.
So it's similar to the other dragonfolk. Again, they kind of imply the idea with Dola that they don't form an attachment until the child's born. So he never really cared much for Lunaria until the child was born. That was the trigger point for him.
At the time, I hadn't realized it, but before I knew it, I'd fallen in love with her.
Lord Dragon God spoke with a nostalgic expression. Lady Lunaria must have always been the same, a woman full of kindness and compassion, and she had directed that love towards Lord Dragon God as well.
Laplace. Yes, I don't think I can forgive the one who killed Lunaria. My body trembles with rage I have never felt before. Yes, even if it means making an enemy of another world. Will you stand by my side?
It's fitting exactly what I think somebody wants. You need not even ask. Not just me. Every one of the 5 dragon generals will follow you to the end, even if it means our destruction. Lord Dragon God stood up in silence. His eyes were sharp as blades, and his presence brimmed with killing intent. There was no sadness left. I felt afraid, even though his wrath was not directed at me. There was no creature in any world that would not be terrified at that presence, and thus his revenge began. It had begun. There goes. All down here from here. Master. When Laplace came to his senses, Rosalina was standing right in front of him. She looked at him with concern.
What is it, Rosalina? The story isn't over yet. Can't you bear to listen any longer?
No, that's not it. Please, continue your story. But, Lord Laplace, wouldn't it be best if you took a short break?
Why do you think that is?
Because Rosalina took a handkerchief from her pocket and touched Laplace's face. Oh. The cloth darkened as it absorbed something from his cheek. That's right. At some point, Laplace had begun to cry. Tears streamed from his eyes as he sobbed. His words had become incoherent, and by the end, he could barely articulate what he was saying.
My apologies. Whenever I remember that time, I just can't help myself.
Lord Laplace, you loved Lady Lunaria, didn't you?
Of course. She was my mother. We shared no blood, yet she was always by my side, watching over me. Whenever I returned home, she was there, smiling as she listened to me. She was a goddess full of kindness. That such a person was murdered so cruelly. The fact those days will never return. Even now, when I remember that. Oh.
Laplace wept. He covered his eyes with one hand, lowered his head, and trembled, sobbing quietly. Rosalina silently watched the large man, who was twice her size, as he cried. She was bewildered. She had never seen Laplace cry before. But after a moment, she hurried to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and returned. Gently, she stroked Laplace's back and offered him a glass.
Thank you, Rosalina. Now that I think about it, you've brought me a lot of comfort. I haven't lived with anyone in a long time, so I'm happy.
No, it's fine, Master. There's no need to thank me. After all, you saved me as well.
I see. Then let's just say it's the same for both of us.
Laplace said that as he adjusted his posture on the chair. His eyes were red and swollen, but the tears had stopped. There was no more sobbing. His voice was once again clear.
Now, let's continue the story. I apologize, but from here on out, I might end up crying again.
That's fine. I'll keep the water ready for you.
You're quite considerate. Well then.
Laplace rubbed his eyes and gazed out into the void once more, recalling a past, one he wished he could forget.
Okay.
The beginning of the end. This is absolutely the beginning of the end. Well, I'm going to call it there. We're running a little bit long here, but what a good set of chapters. My gosh, what a build up. Definitely a different perspective of Lord Dragon God and seeing him sort of in a fury point. And again, they kind of explain that being similar to what happened with Dola. She didn't really care much for Crystal until the moment the child was born. And suddenly there's an emotional attachment there, where normally they don't really have any attachment. It's just more interesting the fact that it's with him and his connection to, Lunaria, when Lunaria is the one giving the birth, whereas Dola was the one giving birth. So it's sort of an opposite effect here. I guess the question mark, would Crystal care about Dola if he was still alive? Is it only the females on their birth that they have that connection? But, yeah, what a little twist in here. Again, it's expected. We were kind of assuming there was going to be a catalyst that would kind of trigger all this to happen. And I would assume that whatever comes from this is going to be some sort of tie-in with, probably going to be the demon folks. I hope it's not Kirishishu. I can see them tying it to her because they put a lot of emphasis on her and her connection to Lady Lunaria. That I can see it being her. That she ends up being either the one blamed for it, or I hope nobody made her do it. I doubt that. It seemed like she liked them. That aside, though, I like a lot of the world building they've done with this whole set of chapters. I really like this kind of showing of how each of these, subordinates to the gods themselves have come together and formed together to make groups to sort of help dispel a lot of problems. And again, make more ties between the worlds and do these kind of exchanges between them. Again, having the demon folks coming there and do studies of the teleportation magic with the dragon folk and how the dragon folks themselves aid in as well, which again sort of does check with how we've kind of described the dragon folk and how they get obsessed and focus on certain things and study certain things. So good set of chapters, really good stuff, really juicy Mushoku Monday this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it just as much as I did. I really did enjoy this set of chapters. But we'll see next week who ends up getting blamed for this and where it goes from here. But I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday as always, chat. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week after Mushoku Monday ends. Make sure to hit the like button before you leave. But I greatly appreciate you guys' support, your kind words, all that stuff. And yes, greatly appreciate it. Support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you. But until the next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care. She made sure to scatter Salyak's shred. She made sure to scatter Salyak's spread. She made sure to scatter Salyak's shred. Salyak's shred scales. Salyak's, that's a tongue twister right there. Salyak's shred scales. Salyak's shred scales. Everybody say that 10 times fast. Salyak's shed scales. She made sure to scatter his sails. She made sure to scatter his scales and droppings that